and I hope to upload it to YouTube at some point. You'll be able to go back and see yourself and hear your questions. And anyway, on to business. Tom writes under a pen name, but he's pretty happy to have you know who he really is. So Tom Sullivant, first, it's been, golly, a number of years when you came back. You came to the guild several years back when we were used to meet at Auntie's, I think. And then you were, for a while, I knew of you in a critique group, and then you kind of got very courageous and went off on your own. I think you had maybe another critique group you were meeting with, but the results have been wonderful because you've had, how many books have you got out now, Tom?
Well, just one collaboration book, one book that's not yet published, and a couple of short stories included in anthologies.
Cool, cool. Well, we're happy. I asked Tom to come because he caught my attention when he said that he had placed his ebook, or is it print?
It's ebook.
Ebook with several different online sellers, and I'm not used to having people do that. Usually they will have it either just at one big one where they've published or whatever. So I thought, gosh, I'm sure he's got a lot he can share with us tonight about that process. And then if you have questions a little later, we'll be able to pummel him with those. Give him a good massage there, Tom. You'll go back to your fitness clinic, all raring to go. Anyway, I thought I would just turn it over to Tom, and he can kind of give you a little short history of his experience, and then see where it goes from there. Okay, Tom, take it away.
All right, thanks, Linda. Hey, everybody, it's nice to meet you virtually. I would bet that I speak for everybody when I say I hope we can meet in person again someday. You know, in some sort of normalcy. But I got I got started writing in 2009. I was actually on my way to my last deployment. I did a couple of decades in the Air Force, and I kind of wanted to start doing something else after I retired. And I decided to start writing because whenever I would go to the bookstore, and I used to go a lot to check out the new books and the cover art, much of the back matter, the description on the back of the books, they all sounded the same to me. And at the time, I didn't like that, and I certainly didn't understand why. But I thought that I could write a story that was just as good, but didn't sound the same on the back cover. Because basically every story said, okay, hero X is going to save the Earth from aliens. They all had the same sort of, you know, take on that, and I just got tired of hearing the same thing over and over and over. So I started writing when I was deployed, and quickly learned that I didn't know the first thing about writing. So then I spent the next 10 years learning how to write. And the first project I wrote is never going to see the light of day because that was a practice project. So if you have one of those or thinking about publishing your first book, I would just chalk that up to a practice project and go on to the next one. If it's fiction, I'm talking about fiction here. But then I caught up with my co-writer a couple of years ago at a conference in Chicago, and we decided to write a science fiction book together. And I did most of writing. He was more on the kind of the technical marketing side, did the cover, did the blurb, you know, the back matter, that sort of thing, the editing. And then we finally, 2020 hit, and kind of, I don't know, it didn't come to a stop, but it came to a slow pace. 'Cause a lot of things got in the way, especially with my co-writer. He actually had a tree fall on his house one day, and then the pandemic killed his business for a while, and then on top of that, he was diagnosed with cancer. So my co-author had a really tough time last year, and was kind of out of the game for a while. And that kind of slowed me down a little bit, but we managed to get through it. And to be honest, the product didn't turn out quite as good as we had hoped because of all those things. But then I think we were kind of suffering from a little bit of fatigue from everything involved, not just the book, but life in general. Then the decision was made to publish wide versus going exclusive with the big elephant in the room, Amazon. And Linda asked me to talk a little bit about that. So I started learning a lot about that, and I can tell you, I can talk about the decisions behind that if you would like to hear all that. So enough said, question time. Whoever wants to go first, just speak up.
I'll go.
Okay, go for it.
Who's your publisher, your self-publisher, or did you truly do it yourself?
Yeah, I'm down as the publisher because I don't have I didn't create a business entity for that. That's not really necessary with the first book, but it may become necessary down the road. So I'm the publisher, and most of the platforms list both of our names as authors. So we're on Amazon, we're on Apple, we're on Kobo. We're on probably 2 or 3 different library systems. Let's see, and a lot of that's through also Google Play, Google Books. A lot of that is through Draft to Digital. So they're a service that kind of aggregates a lot of different platforms all around the world, including libraries, including the major publisher houses, like the people that libraries buy from, that sort of thing, Baker and Taylor and whatnot. So some of that is done through Draft to Digital, and then the other 3 or 4 I did individually and manually, just to learn the process, so I can understand how it's done and what those platforms are doing with your book, with your information, and how you're getting it all set up. I did a lot of that, for one, to learn how to do it, so I know how it's treated and what happens when someone buys a book. But then also, an author has to decide, has to look into the future and then decide how they want their, assuming you have future fans, how you want them to react. How you want to train them to expect your books. So for example, if you want to do KU and you get a handful of books up on that exclusive platform, your readers are going to expect that from then on. So if you ever decide to go wide, take it out of exclusive, and now they got to pay for the individual book, they're probably not going to like that, because they're used to getting it for their subscription service fee, which is basically, quote unquote, free. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Didn't know you could even do that.
Yeah, it's a conscious decision, and it doesn't have to be permanent, and it doesn't have to be the same with all your books, especially if you have more than one pen name. But it's something you want to consider, because readers do get used to a certain expectation. If the books are free and Kindle Unlimited, they don't want to turn around the next month on your next book and start paying for it if it's wide. And then the other side of that coin is, a lot of folks won't buy at Amazon, for all kinds of reasons. if you're in a genre that is, suitable for worldwide distribution, you may want to get on some of those wider platforms, to grow you have a much bigger audience to sell to. Yeah.
You said your partner did the marketing. What kinds of marketing did you do, and what kinds of success have you had as a result?
Too early for success because it's only been up on about a month or so. But he brought to the table an already huge, following from his own books and from his podcast. He used to be one of the hosts on the Sell More Book Show podcast. So he had a huge email list. And he's also an author of like a dozen or so nonfiction books, mostly with internet marketing and motivational speaking, that sort of thing. So he had a huge following already that we could work on. And then we had easy access to the Sell More Book Show podcast, which has tens of thousands of listeners. So, we got basically, I think probably 4 or 5 different episodes where our book was mentioned or our project was mentioned, or, we announced it was available for, ARC readers or buying or whatever the case was. So we had an easy in there. And then he also had contacts with the editing service we used and the cover designer. And that was his contribution. Mine was mostly just the writing part. Did I answer that question for you? Okay, good. Yeah.
It sounds like a perfect marriage to me. I'd love to.
Yeah, it was actually kind of designed that way. It was Jim's idea originally to do a collaboration project because he wanted to learn a little bit more about how to write fiction. So yeah, it was kind of a win-win in that regard as well. Yeah.
So did he already know how to do the metadata since he was already?
Yeah, yes, because he'd been covering it for years, and he's been an internet marketer for years. So he knows how to read that, how to do some of the ad copy and that sort of thing to do what we wanted to do.
That's huge.
Yes. That's one reason why I agreed to do it with him. So I could learn as well.
How complicated is the upload process and all that for these different sites? Could you use the same data, the same file on all of them?
Yes and no. Most of the files can use the same file that Apple used, which is an EPUB file. Amazon likes to be different, so they use a MOBI file. But if you use a service like Vellum or Draft to Digital, they can create those files for you from whatever you write your book in. So I use Microsoft Word. And all I have to do is upload the Word document to Draft to Digital, and they convert it to MOBI file or PDF or EPUB file. From there, all the different platforms, their process are all pretty similar. You have to have the cover, and you have to have the actual text file, and then the information such as the author, the ISBN if you're going wide, publication date, if you have a publisher or a business entity, that sort of thing. Just basic data, really. But they all kind of do it the same. Each platform has a different time period for when you hit submit to when it's approved and then put on their site. That varies by platform. I'm actually still waiting for 2 through Draft to Digital. I think Scribd and something else. They're taking like almost 2 months now. Not sure why. Amazon took less than 2 days. Apple took about a week. And I actually made the mistake of doing this between Christmas and New Year's. So it took longer because a lot of folks were, on vacation or on holiday. And I found out that Apple simply shuts down a lot of their customer services stuff during that 2-week period. So you can still buy stuff on Apple. You just can't do any business as the backside of Apple. So little things to be aware of when you do stuff like that.
What about upfront contracting? Any fees that had to be paid to these sites? Is there anything like that?
No, if you're uploading yourself as a indie author, nobody requires you any fees. So if someone's telling you to pay a fee, then run away, because none of those major platforms charge you an upfront fee. Now they do take a percentage of your sale of the royalty, for using their platform, but that's not the same as an upfront fee. Yeah, there's a big difference there.
They have any upfront, I'm thinking of contracts. Do they have any requirement to stay on their site for any length of time? Do you have to sell a certain number to show that you're actually doing marketing and all that, or is it just
Nope.
flat out?
Yeah, you could conceivably put a book up there and never sell one copy and it stays there for 10 years. Yeah. That's not their worry, because they don't lose any money if it just sits there, and they make money if you sell a copy. Now, they do have certain requirements based on, you want to make sure it's categorized appropriately. You wouldn't want to write, say a dark horror and put it in the children's category, for example. So they will check that. And most people aren't going to do that anyway. So you want to know your genre before you do that. Just small things like that. I didn't have any problems with any of those platforms. And they make it easy, step by step. If it doesn't work, they tell you why it doesn't work. Like, for example, if your thumbnail for the cover is too small, they'll let you know. It has to be a certain size. Can't be too big, can't be too small. And a certain, not only file size, but a certain dimension size as well. If you see an odd shape on Amazon on occasion, or Apple, it's because someone didn't have the right size of file and it stands out. So maybe that's on purpose, but most readers, most buyers want to see a uniform set of pictures on their device. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not always good to stand out like that.
For sure. So you said you published wide. Can I go to Auntie's or the Tattered Cover in Denver and their online source, their online site, and buy your book through them that way? Or do you have to do it through these other, like Apple and Google and Amazon, et cetera?
Yeah, so right now my book is only available in ebook style.
Okay.
So I doubt that Auntie's would be able to bother, because they don't deal with ebooks. Now, if it was available as print on demand, then yeah, they could go and order that way. Yeah.
Do you plan on growing into that, or are you happy with your ebooks only?
We're taking it one step at a time. We're going to see how this goes, because it costs a little more money to produce the files for a print book, and then obviously it costs more for the person, for a reader to buy it.
But people still buy books, though.
Well, true, but you have to take your each individual has a, I mean, each situation is unique.
You're right. Sure.
And we decided because this was our first book as a collaboration and Jim's first book as fiction. We wanted to, not spend a ton of money and then nothing ever sells. So we're taking it one step at a time. We're not doing a lot of advertising because we're actually doing a couple things where we want to do more word of mouth and try to generate some organic reviews before we start pushing a lot of money. And like ads, I'm actually very anti-ad for Amazon and Facebook because a lot of their practices are anti-author, and they just want to suck you dry for money. So I have kind of a bias against that. I'm in no hurry to build my readership and to make sales. It's not my primary, means of income. So I can wait a couple years to build, a readership and an email list versus pushing a lot of money, for no guaranteed returns. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
How do you find your email lists?
There's different strategies. I've been working on a series of blog posts and short stories to offer potential readers as what we call a reader magnet. So in the back of my book, you'll find the link to my website, and several short stories are free download. And I'm slowly building up, a list of blog posts that will, give readers an idea of my writing, what I like to talk about. And when you post a blog post, and I'm still learning this part too, but you have to include certain keywords and tags so that the search engine can find them.
Right.
And that's a lot in that one little sentence, and I don't know much about it, but that's kind of how that works.
It's pretty key, I understand. Do you have a copy of your book you can hold up for us to see? Oh, no, it's an ebook. Of course not.
I can show you my ebook.
Yeah.
Hang on a second.
At least give us the title and you'll give us the website before we're
Yeah,
done, right?
I don't know if you have access to the Guild on my Facebook stuff, but it's on there.
Okay, thanks,
Post it,
Linda.
Post picture and everything of it. So
All right. There. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So that's the cover. A guy named Derek Murphy did our cover, and we actually have on my website, there's actually a link to a video that shows him working on the cover. If you're interested in that, it's actually quite a bit. It's about an hour long, and he did a fantastic job, and he's an expert at it. I will never ever try to make a cover because I'm just not, a graphic designer, and I would say to any author, if you're not a designer, don't even bother, because it will show. It will show. Yeah. I did one cover of my own for one of my short stories, and you can tell it's homemade.
yeah, I've seen a lot of them over the years.
Yeah. And a lot of folks, can't avoid it because they're expensive. A good cover is not cheap. But if your long-term goal is to make, write a lot of books over the course of however many years, then you kind of want to plan to invest in that from the beginning.
There are some inexpensive things, Tom, available where you can buy just cover art. But I agree, you're still going to want to lay it into some layout, and that's important. Barbara mentioned that she thought we should have Russ Davis from Grey Dog. She's probably not been coming to them. We've had Russ a couple of times in the past over the years, but things have changed enough now and have rolled along. I might ask him if he wants to come along too and give us some hints about it. It says, Joan asks, why do you say people don't buy ebooks from Amazon?
Well, for me, if I can find an ebook on Kobo or Apple, I prefer to buy from them because I like their apps on my iPad better than the Kindle app. And I think Amazon does that on purpose because they want you to buy their Kindle device to read their Amazon books. So I think a lot of it comes down to personal preference. I like my iPad mini, and I like the Apple Books app on the iPad versus the Kindle app on my iPad. To me, it's a better experience. So I will always buy Apple or Kobo if I can. And that doesn't mean I won't buy from Amazon. I just go look there first. But a lot of folks are strange that way. I like t-shirts and sweatpants. A lot of people like dress pants and a button-down shirt. It just comes down to a lot of personal preference, and people are stubborn. That's all there is to it. But that's okay. I mean, that's one reason why I went wide, because I want to have people to have a choice. What else?
I was going to mention too, back to what Esther asked before. If you go on Auntie's website and look for a book, when they come up, it'll have a link to go further for an ebook, and I believe it goes to Kobo.
Oh, really? Okay.
We partnered with them years ago. However,
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. I've not tried it. I'm going to try it with your book now, Tom, to see if there's a book that's actually not in print at all, if it will come up and offer the ebook. Or it may not. It may be that it has to exist in print first before that will even show up on the screen. So I'll try that out and let you know.
Yeah, that's interesting, because if it goes to Kobo, I mean, up until like this year, they've been all ebooks or audio.
They are. Oh no, Kobo was because we were selling e-readers 6 years ago from Kobo.
Right. So if your system links to that, then it should link to whatever ebook they got up on their site.
But it goes through, it does a search based on a huge catalog that we tap into, and if it may require it be in print before it'll come up as a response.
Oh, interesting.
And then once it comes up, it shows a link for ebook. But you see what I'm saying? In other words, I could type in your book title, it may say not found.
Right, because it doesn't, not listed as a
Yeah,
print.
but I'm going to try it and see what happens, and I'll let you know.
Yeah, interesting.
I just got my book into Auntie's bookstore this week, and so I just now went and did a check. And so the print copy is there, and there is a link where you can look for ebook, and it takes you to the Kobo version.
Right. But that's because yours is in print.
It's in both print and ebook.
Yeah, but Tom's isn't.
Okay.
So that's the difference. I want to know if it will search and offer the ebook option if it can't find his title in print. No.
What about Bookshop? Are you tied in with Bookshop, Linda? And I know that they are printed versions, because I've bought my own book through bookstores that way. Are they ebook also, or?
If you go into Bookshop, you can find Auntie's is one of the stores that's listed. We're there. We have a nice little intro thing that says, "Hi there, you found us. We hope you'll go to our website to buy," because it's just better for us if you do. Plus, that's where you get the events. But I believe they have to be print books there too.
Okay.
So I could be wrong. I'll check them all out and see what happens.
You could do a search by ISBN, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But an ebook is going to have a different ISBN than a print book too.
Well, true, yeah.
So if I search in our website, which is connected with ABA, huge, you know, like what, 250,000, 300,000 books in print. If I search there and it cannot find that book in print, then that's the question. Will it even bring up any other options?
Yeah, that'd be interesting to learn if that was the case or not.
Yeah.
We went ahead and got, I actually bought a block of 10 ISBNs for this book. So we use one for the ebook because if you do go wide, you need ISBNs. And if you do go multiple format, then you're going to need one ISBN for each format.
Mm-hmm.
So that includes ebook, print book, large print book, audio book.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you do like any kind of foreign translation, then each of those will have one as well.
Yeah.
So if you're planning to publish several books or multiple books, then you're better off buying ISBNs in blocks.
Yeah.
If anybody's at that stage. You're muted.
You can do that. You can buy ISBNs in block.
Yeah. If you go to the Bowker website, BOWKER, they sell ISBNs here in the US. I think it's just BOWKER.com or something to that effect. Do a search for Bowker, it'll come up.
It'll come up.
You can buy one, or you can buy 10. I think you could buy 100 or 150, something like that. It comes in 3 or 4 different, chunk sizes. Buying one is a large waste of your money if you ever want to publish more than one book. They actually make it much more economical to buy 10 versus one. So something to keep in mind.
So what does one cost versus 10?
Last time I checked, one ISBN was about $150,
And 10?
and 10 was about 300.
Wow.
So big difference. Yeah.
Yeah, for any business, it's interesting. The highest cost is involved in just sitting down, taking your request, your purchase, dealing with it. And then the other end of coming together with however many you want, that's easy. That's just computer, grab the numbers and go. So you're always going to pay more for a first of anything than, but that's why he's saying it's best if you get a few, because you're probably going to want them to go.
Yeah, and when I was researching that, what it does is it kind of makes you sit back and think about the future. You kind of have to predict your future. If you're writing fiction, and it's going to be a series, and depending on the genre, and the length of your book, the word count, you kind of have to look ahead and see, what the possibilities might be. Because a lot of people like reading in series, and a lot of people like reading or like the audiobook, and it's a step-by-step process. So if you publish 3 books and they do well, and then you publish a few more, eventually you're going to be able to get to the point where you can afford to produce an audiobook. And right there you've got 6, 7, 9 ISBNs in just 6 books. You could potentially have one ISBN and the same title but in 4 different formats. So kind of depends on what your long-term strategy is to how you buy things like covers and ISBNs and your editor, stuff like that.
So if you buy a block of ISBNs, then do you assign the book that goes with the particular number? I mean, and
Yeah.
do publishers, I'll bet they buy in big blocks then.
They do.
Did you know that? They do.
Yeah,
They do.
would, 'cause
Interesting.
they're dealing with hundreds of books,
Sure.
let alone the audio versions and the ebook versions, and
Yeah, and that's why the number's like, what, 9 or 12 digits long.
So did you do a Library of Congress as well, Tom, for your book?
No, because that's pretty much automatic. Every book published finds their way there eventually.
Really?
Yeah. So, and the same thing with the copyright. That's automatic. You don't necessarily have to specifically copyright your book. It's automatic with your name on it.
Doesn't Library of Congress kind of ensure that anyway? That was my understanding.
Not specifically. I mean, you can, if you create something, you're automatically copyrighted it. But the reason people do copyright is because if it's officially copyrighted, you know, with your fee and with the U.S. government, then you have a better standing if it has to go to court. You have a little more, you know, a little more weight behind it.
Sure.
Yeah, one of the major differences that I'm aware of is that anytime someone sees a copyright notice, the little C or the word copyright next to your name on the work, then that alerts them that it's supposedly copyrighted. But if you don't have it registered with the federal government, if someone does a search, a title search or an author search for that work, and it's not found, they come back with an answer that says, we don't have any record of that. That could be used as a possible argument in court. They could say, well, hey, we searched. Here's my thing from the copyright offices. They didn't have any record of it, because it isn't automatic at that end. Now, most of us are never going to end up suing anybody for anything. So, you know, we're not Stephen King. So it's kind of like, no, we don't have the money to go to court in the first place. What we would be able, all you can usually do in court is to get them to stop using it, stop selling. And if you're lucky, they can pay your fees in court. And that's about it. I mean, it's not like you're going to get all this, because it's not like there's damages, okay? They've just been selling your product without permission. And so you can get them to stop. You might get a little back money in that, but, and I probably shouldn't say too much more because I'm not a lawyer and I don't want to get charged with practicing law without a license. So, but that's the general scuttlebutt, okay?
Yeah, if the chances of a book being, you know, pirated is probably 50-50. But, you know, the people that buy or download pirated books are not going to be your target audience. And unless they're, you know, making millions off of it, it's really not even worth the effort. Now, if you find your book under a different name on one of the platforms, you can have that platform, you know, take down their book because you already have the established, you know, precedents. So if you happen to find it or someone lets you know about it, that sometimes happens, and they usually, you know, Amazon or whoever, Apple will take down the imposter. It won't happen immediately, but it does happen. So as long as you have proof that you were there first and you have the original, you know, documents, it's usually not a problem. And, you know, in my case, I'm so new to the game that I'd be flattered if someone copied my book and sold it somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah, I know my husband has a lot of music, and we used to copyright everything through the copyright office, because in searches, people will go and look for the artist, look for the music. It all gets matched.
Right.
And yeah, so it's a pretty good process. We've, you know, when people do searches for you, it'll usually bring it up if it's there.
Yeah, and you know, the majority of buyers are honest, and they're going to buy from their favorite platforms, you know, because they have a subscription or whatever. So it's not a real big deal these days.
I was going to ask you, Tom, if you, I don't know if everyone is aware, if down at the bottom of your screen, I believe on anybody on Zoom, there's a thing where you can hit the chat. And if you do, you'll see all the things here that have been typed in. People have been, Barbara has put quite a bit of stuff in the chat.
All right, let me I wasn't even paying attention. So let me. pull
Well,
up the-
I've been watching it for questions and she's not putting questions usually. There was one or two, and I asked those earlier from folks. But others, if you want, you can see the chat and then you can copy that, take stuff off of that if you'd like. There's sometimes a link or something will be typed in. And the other thing I was going to say, what was it, Linda? Get your brain back now. Oh, yeah. Tom, if you would be willing to type in the names of these sites, even if you can't remember exactly, we'd be able to look them up and then we could go track down your book and see,
Oh,
the places that I know Amazon is one, you say.
yeah,
And
there's Amazon. So the book is, I'll type it in here. Rock Rain by, and let's see. Can't spell my co-author's name. All right, so that's the name of the book, and we're on all the major platforms. So Amazon, Apple, Kobo, Google.
that Google Books or Google
Yeah, it's Google Play Books.
Play Books. Okay.
Yeah. So those are the major platforms, and I'd have to look up the other ones, but I can, give me a couple seconds here.
Sure. I always have to play devil's advocate and ask questions I may know the answer to, but not everybody does. So
Well, I have the major ones memorized. I don't have the other ones, because the other ones, a lot of them are not even US based.
oh, really?
Yeah. Okay, so there's also Barnes and Noble.
I was going to ask about that. Books A Million?
No, not Books A Million. I never actually saw that, because I use, besides the 4 I just listed, I use Drafted Digital to go through the rest of them. So we got,
And Barbara has put that into the chat. Drafted
Digital. They're an excellent source. They have a podcast, and they have a pretty good Facebook live every day at noon or so, I think. Tolino, no. See, Overdrive. Have you heard of that one, Linda?
No, I have. Well, I have to say I've heard of it, but never enough to actually understand what it was.
Gotcha. It's it's I think it's a place where libraries can go to get books. I think.
That could be.
Yeah, I think.
I probably see and deal with about 100 to 150 different services. Because of the publishers that I work with, and
Right.
I get so many of these things stacked up in my head, I can't tell one from another anymore.
Okay, there's a few more. So Barnes and Noble, Tolino, Overdrive, Biblio, Biblioteca, Baker and Taylor. Yeah.
I wondered about Baker. Yeah.
I'm actually still waiting on one called Scribd and one called Hoopla.
I'm familiar with those. Yeah.
Yeah. So all these platforms are designed to basically take it worldwide in one form or another. So like I said, just getting started, and I'll take my time and be patient and grow the worldwide audience as I put out more titles and stuff like that.
Are you at all concerned about how would I want to phrase this? Not the security so much as the security and the honesty of the sellers in this. Once it gets overseas, it's so easy for things to be pulled, changed, renamed, you know what I'm saying? There's a lot of more piracy goes on, but affecting things overseas based on American works than,
Right. I'm not concerned about receiving the royalties because those major platforms ensure that. You know, they're all, you know, the Apple, Amazon, Kobo, they're all reputable people. They're not going to cheat the author.
not the big ones, but you were referring to ones you said were more overseas. And
Well, they
are you
yeah, they
thinking of
distribute,
Amazon overseas rather than?
they distribute overseas in other countries, but a lot of them are based here in Europe or the US.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've
They
just
just
heard
have
some-
they just have access to the foreign markets, whereas a lot of the, you know, a lot of Amazon only has a few foreign markets, for example.
I've just
So-
heard some horror stories from authors where someone was going to promote their works overseas and it disappeared and it ended up in somebody else's hands. It actually ended up being sold to some publisher in another country. And so,
Yeah, if you're not going through a company like, you know, Draft to Digital, then yeah, it's definitely, you know, publisher beware.
yeah, and I think that that wasn't necessarily around. I don't know when they started up, but a lot of this stuff comes from and some of the companies like that have opened up because of those problems. And they now have a niche market where they can work with authors and stuff.
Yep. And you know, this pandemic has really driven growth in the ebook market as well worldwide, because, you know, people were largely stuck at home or much reduced, you know, as far as getting out.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of room to grow in the worldwide ebook market yet to come.
Yeah.
Now I looked into German translation, and that's quite expensive. I use my book as an example. I got two different quotes. One was for 8 grand and one was for 10 grand. Yeah, my book's only 85,000 words. So unless I start selling, you know, 1,000 copies a day, there's no translation coming anytime soon. An audiobook production is about half that, so quite a bit less. And conceivably, I could do that myself, but I'm not that good a speaker, so that probably won't happen either.
Plus, there's more of a tendency, if a book is doing well in this country, there's a tendency of companies overseas or publishers that recognize potential. They may come to you and pay for the cost in order to
Yep.
do that. So,
Yep. And that's not unheard of. And if your book does well on, you know, Amazon, for example, the better it does, the more Amazon will push it for you, and then it gets, you know, gets a wider audience, versus having to, you know, pay a lot of money for ads. But again, you want to look ahead to the future and, you know, kind of have those answers and decisions ready if you think that's a potential, you know, possibility for you. Like, I have no intention of selling my rights to any foreign publisher. Sorry about that. I'm talking too much. But if my books do well enough, then I'll do the translations myself. And then through whatever contact I can find, I will, you know, find a reputable publisher. One thing I don't want to do is hand over any rights. So you want to license it, not turn over the rights. There's a difference. Does that make sense?
mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that also includes these days the potential for AI learning. So as artificial intelligence matures, you're going to see more and more authors using AI to do translations and to actually help them write the book. Right now, there's AI voices are almost indistinguishable between human voices. So that technology is on the rise. So you want to, some authors are even going to start, licensing their voice in addition to their written work.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I'll probably be doing that in the future.
Hi, Bonnie. Any other questions we have for Tom?
I have another one.
Mhm.
So are you set up with your systems to track your sales? Did your savvy partner do that part for you? So you know how many and where they're coming from. And if you don't mind, tell us how many books you've sold.
Not very many so far.
Well, what is not very many? It could be 2,500 or that could be
Well,
25.
as I said, he just got posted not too long ago. within
Yeah,
the- so
it's barely been up a month, and I would say maybe a dozen or so.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Been
we've
there.
not, yeah, we've not advertised at all. We're kind of going the for lack of a better term, the cheap route. And as far as tracking, each of those different platforms has a dashboard for your account, and it's really easy to see when a book was sold, when it was bought, what the royalty is, what day it was bought, what country it was bought from. And then if you're on Draft to Digital, for example, they'll give you a kind of an aggregated spreadsheet sort of breakdown. In my case, I have my own spreadsheet that I will manually input the information into because I like doing that sort of thing. If you're the type of person that doesn't want to do any of that, then you don't really have to. Draft to Digital also takes care of all the foreign money exchange and all the taxes involved as well. And
Wow.
it breaks it all down. Yep.
That's
so,
big.
what does Draft to Digital get out of it?
They take a percentage.
Okay.
Yeah. Right now, I have it set up with most of the platforms take what is it about roughly 30%, depending on your price. Amazon, for example, if you price too low, they will take 70%. If you price too high, they will take 70%. So they want you to price in the middle, and then you get 70% instead of, and they take 30%. So that was another thing I had to figure out, was how to price my book. With all the work that we put into it and the cost of the cover and the editing, I didn't want to price it, 99 cents or $1.99, because you basically won't make much money back unless you sold a bazillion copies overnight. And that's not really feasible. So I priced it at the $2.99 range, and that's based on a lot of studies and data collection. That's where people like to buy, is at $2.99. Between $2.99 and $9.99 is the sweet spot. So I started out low. The next book in that series will probably be $3.99, for example, or $4.99, 1, 2, and 3 sort of thing.
I just saw an article about click-through charges for marketing, and it mentioned the high cost. There was something, oh gosh, Book Sniffer that's been advertising or coming through on Facebook, and I've been passing on to and just telling people, hey, you're on your own. I don't know from Book Sniffer, but they charge 9 cents a click, and they were quoting some pretty high prices for like Amazon, and it
Yeah.
ranged.
Yeah, they're making a hard push to compete with Amazon and Facebook for ad money.
Mhm.
And I think initially they'll be able to charge, a lot less. But on the flip side, their reach is a whole lot smaller still. They're brand new. I almost invested in that company. But I think they have a lot of room for improvement before I do that.
Mhm.
They actually have a start engine campaign going on for investment. Their app is kind of cool, but it's still not without its issues. For example, every time I try to do a filtered search for science fiction, I get everything but science fiction. And they have not returned repeated messages asking what the problem is. So it's a good idea. I think they're ambitious, but they still got a few things to work out.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the most recent thing. They said they had it something like, what was it, 16,000 authors, or am I getting that number wrong? Possibly.
I don't know about that. It could be. I mean,
Yeah.
from an author point of view, that's a really nice alternative to Amazon and Facebook, because those two companies charge, huge amounts just to put your book in front of people. That's what their platform has. That's what their business. That's what their business plan has kind of evolved into. Ads for money instead of just being social. And that's what Booksniffer is trying to compete with that. So they're going to offer a lot lower prices to start with, but they have a long ways to go before they can build their readership up.
That's like Bookshop is specifically, well, the people that started it over in Seattle, they're indie, they favor indies, and they're directly trying to compete with Amazon and do something for independent bookstores, independent booksellers, and all that. So they've got a really nice program going where they take very little at all from sales. But so there's a number of different things coming out that way. And I suppose I was thinking about the click-through charges. If you're prepared to do your own marketing through other places and direct people to Amazon for purchases, then their advertising program wouldn't be nearly as good looking to you as if you have no marketing plan of your own and you kind of need them to do the push. Then so I would think there's a range of reasons for whether or not you'd go with them or do your own, or like anything else, you pay for what you don't want to do yourself.
Right. And it comes down to sort of, in my opinion, it's more like a self-regulated, pecking order. As a brand new author, it's hard for me to justify spending, tons of money on ads and people don't even know me yet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But on the flip side, people don't know you because you haven't put it in front of their eyes yet.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's a personal decision. A lot of new authors simply don't have the budget to do that, so they got to find other creative ways to get the word out.
Yeah.
So they offer a lot of free stuff, try to build their email list, and and try to get the word out by word of mouth. It's a slower process, but not everybody has the funds to dump into Amazon or Facebook ads, which, by the way, Facebook ads might be coming down here soon. I don't know if anybody's been paying attention to their little feud with Apple, but Apple's fixing to make it so Facebook has to, our iPhone users have to make a decision if they want to be tracked by Facebook or not. The majority of users are probably going to opt out no, which might cause a lot of advertisers on Facebook to stop advertising, which in turn would drop the cost of advertising.
Mhm.
It's probably going to happen this year.
Yeah, it's interesting to say that even the marketing programs on these things are driven by market.
Yep.
Yep.
And in reality, you know, the more competition, the better for readers and authors.
Right. Well, we're at 6:07. I don't want to cut folks off. If Tom, I
Oh,
don't know
wow.
if you've got more time or not, and so
Hey, Barbara, did I answer your question about the pricing? Okay. Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
that's a
good
tough
luck.
one. It's the pricing is a tough one because it's going to be different for everybody. And it's going to be different for, you know, every book. And it's going to be different for every series of books. So it's really a case by case, you know, decision. Go ahead, Esther. What were you going to say?
I was going to say good luck to you. I'd love to hear from you in a year to see how it's gone and what else you've learned and what you're thinking of at that time. But the best, all the best to you.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm always learning. I
Oh.
learn more and more every time.
Aren't we all? I hope.
And I have a series planned right now that I hope to start writing soon. It involves I call it a star priest. So it should be fun.
interesting.
Intriguing.
Yep.
Yeah. Very good.
Well,
Well,
it was really nice to meet you guys. Thanks for hanging out. It was fun.
Yeah.
thank you for coming.
To get in touch with me, my website, just send an email or sign up for the newsletter list. It doesn't go out very often, but once in a while.
You want to put that in there, Tom?
Yeah, sorry, I just now thought of that. So it's there. So my Tori Element, that's my author name. That's kind of a play on my actual name. The syllables line up. It's really close to Story Element.
Mhm.
So it kind of stands out, kind of rolls off the tongue. It actually came to me on a whim about 3 years ago. So
Well, if anybody else has any comments or that, you remember to unmute yourself if you're going to talk. But otherwise, I will say thank you very much for being here, and we appreciate everybody's time. I do have someone in mind for next time. We have a local children's author who is extremely successful and goes all around the country when she can, maybe even out of country, to do readings in the kids store. So look for that announcement. And I'm looking forward to seeing her. She will talk about children's books and all that good stuff. And we do have some members who are interested in that topic. So might get the word out that if they are interested, get in touch with me. I think you've got my email address. And otherwise, gosh, folks. Hey, Jolene, what you drinking there?
Okay, so this whole meeting, I was driving home. So I finally just got connected back, and here I am. I'm like
Okay.
able to get all this. Yeah, I'm drinking some Fresca. Woo!
Well, that's probably better than what I thought it was, but I think it's because Esther earlier said it's time for margaritas. So anyway, yeah.
Well, I'm not gonna lie, Linda. There is some vodka in this Fresca.
Okay, I thought so. All right.
The truth will out.
Yeah. Well, I've been recording, and I will be putting this up, and I will send you a link sometime next year. No, I hope to do it sooner, but anyway, I'm so behind at my YouTube stuff. Anyway, I will send you a link so you can, I'll just send it to everybody and watch for that so you'll know. And thanks again, I appreciate it.
thank you, Linda.
Good night, everybody.
Night, night.